All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're about to dig into a story that literally impacts every single one of us every day of our lives. We're talking about the history of environmental health.
So, have you ever stopped to think about why we have health inspectors or regulations for clean water? You might think these are pretty modern ideas, right? But the real answer? Well, it's a story that's thousands of years old. It's a journey from pure gut instinct all the way to modern science. And it all begins way, way back.
Okay, so section 1, ancient instincts, ancient problems. Yeah, our story doesn't kick off in some high-tech lab. Nope. It starts with our most basic human instincts and the challenges the world has always thrown at us.
You see, from day one, we've been trying to manage our surroundings. Think about it. The first humans seeking shelter in caves. That was probably the very first step toward creating a healthier living space. And those ancient food laws, the ones that said don't eat this or that, those were basically the first ever food safety rules. It gets even more specific. Ancient texts like Leviticus actually have instructions for how to handle mold in your house. I mean, that's an incredibly early version of managing hazardous waste, isn't it?
And this is where it gets really interesting. That ancient problem of smoke filling up a hut, well, that's the great-great-grandfather of our modern worries about indoor air quality and chemical pollutants. The fundamental issue is exactly the same. It hasn't disappeared, it's just changed its clothes, so to speak.
So for our ancestors, just staying alive was a non-stop battle with the environment. You're talking about natural disasters, food that could kill you, water that was poison, and rats carrying the plague. Dealing with all that was public health in its earliest, rawest form. So for thousands of years, things kind of ticked along. The challenges grew, sure, but they grew slowly as populations did. Then, just a few hundred years back, something happened that turned the entire world on its head. And then, bang, everything changed. The Industrial Revolution arrived, and that old, slow dance between people and their environment, it was completely shattered. This wasn't just a problem anymore. It was a full-blown crisis, bigger than anything humanity had ever faced.
And people started to notice. Guys like Charles Thackeray, he was one of the first to really document the awful human price being paid. He went into the factories, into the mines, and he wrote about the terrible conditions. He showed the world that these new jobs were creating brand new diseases and literally cutting people's lives short. His work was a massive wake-up call.
And this became the new reality for so many. Cities just exploded in size. People were crammed into these filthy neighborhoods with garbage piling up in the streets. The same factories that were supposed to be symbols of progress were actually pumping out danger and sickness. It was, without a doubt, a perfect storm for a public health catastrophe. But, it's often in the worst crises that you find a new kind of hero. And that's exactly what happened. These weren't soldiers or kings. They were scientists, doctors, and thinkers. They picked up a new weapon to fight back: data, observation. They became, for all intents and purposes, the world's very first health detective.
And oh man, did they have a case to crack. We're talking about the Great London Cholera Mystery of 1854. This terrifying disease was just tearing through the city, killing people left and right, and nobody had a clue what was causing it.
This mystery would end up being a huge moment for this brand new field of science called epidemiology. Basically, the science of being a health detective, studying how diseases move through a population and how to stop them. People like John Grant and Edwin Chadwick had already started to connect the dots, using records to show a link between where you lived and how healthy you were. But now, that idea was about to face its biggest test yet. So, this doctor, John Snow, he does something absolutely brilliant. Instead of just running around treating sick people, he stops and thinks. He starts mapping out where everyone who died lived. And when he looked at the map, boom, a pattern emerged. The deaths were all clustered around one specific water pump on Broad Street. So he goes to the authorities and says, "Look, just do this one thing for me. It sounds crazy, but remove the handle from that pump." They did, and just like that, the outbreak started to fade away.
And that right there, that was the big aha moment. It proved something revolutionary. You didn't even need to know what a germ was to stop a disease. You could stop it just by investigating the environment and then changing it. That single idea, well, it changed absolutely everything.
Yeah, Jon Snow's work did way more than just stop one cholera outbreak. It kicked off a full-blown revolution in how we think about health and cities.
People call this time the Great Sanitary Awakening, and for good reason. Armed with this powerful new knowledge, cities went to work. We're talking massive projects, building citywide clean water and sewer systems, putting organized waste management in place, creating new rules for public hygiene, and even developing things we take for granted now, like pasteurization, to make our food safe.
And the results? They were absolutely staggering. Just look at this. As these massive sanitary reforms rolled out across the world in the early 1900s, the death rates, they didn't just go down a little bit, they fell off a cliff, especially for infants.
So what did that actually mean for people? It meant this: a 16-year jump in life expectancy. In just 40 years, between 1900 and 1940, the average lifespan went from 47 all the way to 63. And let's be clear, this wasn't because of some miracle pill. This was almost entirely because we cleaned up our environment. Which, of course, brings us to today. We're now in our modern environmental age. And just as before, the challenges keep changing. If you look at the 20th century, you can see the shift. By the middle of the century, the main worry wasn't so much basic sanitation anymore. It was all these new chemical pollutants coming from industry. That concern is what led to the creation of big agencies like the EPA in the 70s. And now? Well, now the problems we're facing are on a global scale. And you know, the reason this whole history lesson matters so much is because the fight is nowhere near over. Look at this data. Even today, a full quarter, 25% of all deaths around the world are linked to the environment we live in. That's a huge, huge number. The threats today just look a bit different than a dirty water pump. We're dealing with new, emerging diseases, the incredibly complex fallout from global climate change, and all sorts of man-made pollutants that just don't seem to go away. You could say the battlefield has changed, but the war is the same. So when you think about it, the health detectives of the past, people like Jon Snow, they used data, creativity, and sheer force of will to beat the crises of their day. The problems we're up against now, they are way more complex and they're truly global. So it leaves us with a pretty big question, doesn't it? We solved the deadly environmental problems of the past. Do we have what it takes to solve the ones we face today? Thanks for joining us